Let's talk more about the latest round of tariffs and what they could mean for you. Nathan Bomey is a business reporter for Axios. He's also author of the Axios Closer newsletter. He's up late with me tonight here on the Final Five. Nathan, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, glad to be here.
Okay, so today the news was these additional tariffs on China that pushes it to well over 100%. I mean, it seems as though the White House says it's full steam ahead on these tariffs.
Yeah, I mean, double the cost. We're talking about eye for an eye economics at this point, where I poke you in the eye, you poke me in the eye, and the question is, where does it stop? You know, this is a level of tariffs that it would lead to pretty much economic catastrophe for any business that is invested in either China or U.S. markets. And so, you know, the question is there some sort of off-ramp that can be offered to the Trump administration to de-escalate this, or can the Chinese president offer some sort of off-ramp? Because the truth is that we're looking at significant price increases in both countries in all likelihood if this continues.
So at what point do we start feeling these as American consumers?
I think the probably would take a matter of weeks or months. For some products, probably depends on the product. Now, for products where a company maybe could stock up for a little bit, maybe they saw this coming, maybe they imported a little bit extra in the last couple months, so maybe they can sell that at a more normal price. But as these tariffs start to take effect and inventories dwindle, you'll see companies have to pass some of this cost along. We don't think they'll pass the entire cost along to consumers, but they certainly are going to pass a big chunk, and that just means, for example, the cost of cars might go up, or the cost of food might go up.
So we're trying to draw some. I know the pressure in the media sometimes is to draw some direct lines between what we're seeing with what's happening in the stock market and what's happening with the tariffs. And yes, there are some corollaries here. We're seeing some things coincide with each other. But many people in the White House have said, and many of the president's supporters have also said, Americans shouldn't panic. I think for a lot of Americans, it's really tough to hear that when you're looking at your 401k on a daily basis, whether or not they're onto something.
Yeah, you know, there's been this idea that maybe a lot of people don't care because they're not invested in the stock market. But the truth is that about 62% of American adults have money in the stock market in some way or another, whether they own individual stocks or perhaps they have a retirement account that has stocks or mutual funds. And so, you know, that means more than 6 in 10 people are going to be affected directly by the market impact from this. And so, you know, that means that maybe your retirement, you have to put it off, or maybe you won't have as much money to spend, and that might lead to recession.
So as we look ahead at what's in the offing here, there are some efforts in Congress from Republicans and Democrats to try to take back some of the tariff power, to have Congress sign off on some of these tariffs, or at least have the White House justify the importance of them. And there's been a lot made, Nathan, as you know, about whether or not these are actually reciprocal tariffs. You know, when you look at some of these percentages being put on the formula that the White House used. But once again, it doesn't seem as though there is, as you said, an off-ramp for something like this. It seems as though the White House is they're satisfied. They think that results are going to pay off sooner rather than later.
Well, it does seem like cracks are starting to form in the Republican coalition supporting the president on this particular issue, because, you know, I think that Republican senators are hearing from their members in their states that they're concerned about price increases. Think about what happened. What was the death blow to the Biden administration? A lot of people would say it was inflation. And so if we see another round of inflation that can be directly tied to tariffs that President Trump has imposed, I think that voters are probably going to hold Republicans accountable. And so I think Republicans are really concerned about that playbook playing out in this administration.
Is there one sector that you see in the American industry, in all of these companies that we've been talking about being affected, that might be disproportionately affected more so than the others? I know you and I have talked here before about the auto industry and how some decisions in Washington might affect the auto industry, but what do you think? Where does that lie?
Well, we know that the auto industry will be dramatically impacted by the tariffs on Canada and Mexico in particular, although there's some exceptions there now. But China, I think that what you need to look at is consumer electronics. Think about Apple in particular. The iPhone is largely made in China. About 90% of it's made in there. They've tried to put production in other countries. They've shifted some to India, for example, but that's pretty slow in the making. And so the reality is that if these tariffs take effect and there's no exemption for Apple, then I think you're looking at massive increases in the price of the iPhone and other Apple products. Now, Apple will probably try to get some sort of exemption, which they actually got the last time around in the first Trump administration. But, you know, there's no guarantee that they'll be able to get that this time. And I think if people see Apple product prices go up, that's going to scare a lot of people.